Hello YouTubers, this is Biggin. Today we're going to be modding an NES and disabling the lockout chip with a optional override switch in the back. This is kind of a medium to high level mod, so if you're not familiar with electronics or how to use a soldering iron, you may want to avoid this project, but it's still interesting to watch. I've made a short clip showing you why we're doing this mod, and well, have a look.
It's annoying. All you want to do is play the game, but you can't because of the blinking red light. Why does the unit do this? How can it be fixed? Well, in short, this was Nintendo's way of keeping people from making unlicensed games, or playing games from other countries. Did it work? Well, kind of. It did keep international games and some unlicensed games from playing, but it sometimes causes trouble with legitimate games. That is where the frustration started for a lot of people. If the signal didn't come from the cartridge just right, the system does this. Ugh, so annoying. I tried to keep all my systems in top shape, so finding a legitimate game that didn't work was a problem for me. So I had to find an international game, Galaga, from Germany I think, and an unlicensed game, Chiller, that I could not get to work. These will make perfect test cases to make sure this mod worked. Now to do this mod, here's the list of equipment you will need. You will need safety glasses, a Phillips head screwdriver, a soldering iron, solder braid for fixing mistakes, electronics grade solder, 22 to 24 gauge insulated wire, 3 different colors. I chose these, but it really doesn't matter. Wire strippers, helping hands. These aren't necessary but really help. Solder flux. This assists with adhesion of solder. Small wire nips. Small. I mean real small nips. You only have about half a millimeter of workspace between each pin to work with, so get them small. Heat shrink tubing, about double the width of the wire. I have a variety pack. Zip ties. A drill bit about the width of the head of the switch. I also have a pack of these that I'll be using. Electronic multimeter for testing. A single pole double throw on switch, also known as an SP-DT switch. An SP-DT switch has 3 prongs on it, as you can see here. The packaging should have the letters SP-DT written on it. The packaging should also say on, meaning either way is an on function of some sort. Finally, be sure the switch does not have parentheses around with the on marking. The parentheses means the switch is momentary, meaning when the switch gets flipped, if you're not holding it, it will flip right back. And I'll always iterate this in every video. A clean workspace is about the best tool you can have. Your first step is to disassemble the Nintendo, removing the board from the unit. If you need more detail on this, please view my video on how to clean and recondition an NES connector. On a side note, I recommend labeling the jacks for the controller ports. This avoids confusion when putting the unit back together. This wasn't covered in my last video, so I'm covering it now. After you've removed your board, your next step is to measure, cut, strip, tin, and prepare all the wires for the mod. Measure out approximately 12 inches of wire of each color. Strip both ends of each wire. Be sure not to strip too much, no more than a quarter inch or a couple of millimeters. Stripping too much can cause shorts when the wire gets laid down the board. Using the solder flux, tin each end of the wire. First, be sure to wear your safety glasses. Also be sure not to breathe in those fumes. They can't be healthy. This is the one part that helping hands can come in handy. Keep in mind, flux can also be used to help adhere solder to any surface you intend to make solder stick to. After tinning the wires, it is time to cut the lead on the lockout chip. This essentially will disable the lockout chip. Locate the chip called 3193A. Find the circle on the chip. Locate the 4th pin from the circle and clip it from the board. Be sure to leave some lead attached to the chip. If you do accidentally break the lead off the chip, no worries. Just put the NES back together. The only downside is you won't have the ability to enable the lockout chip in the future. Now it is time to solder 2 of our wires to the clipped lockout chip. Take one end of the wire, I used red, and solder it to the pin you have just clipped. If you have trouble getting the wire to solder to the pin, apply just a little solder flux with a toothpick and try again. The solder should help the wire to stick. To test, pick up the board by the wire. If the wire doesn't stick to the pin, it means the wire didn't have a good enough connection, and you will need to resolder the wire back on. On the other side of the chip, count from the circle and locate the third pin. Solder another wire, I used black, onto the third pin. After soldering that pin, lift the board with the wire. If the wire stays put, continue to the next step. Time to solder our third and last wire. This wire will need to be soldered to a ceramic capacitor next to the chip. I used a white wire for this one. The wire will need to be soldered to the lead furthest away from the circle on the 3193 chip. Don't forget to give the wire to pull test. Now it is time to lay down the wires diagonally across from the back of the board. Lay them down in a fashion so that the ends of the wire come out with the back of the cartridge port of the unit as indicated here. After that, it is time to drill the hole for the switch. Sorry, forgot to mention you'll need a drill too. Take the top of the unit and drill at the indicated location. Go easy, this is old plastic and can be very brittle. After drilling the hole, take out the switch and try it out for size. Always remember, if you pick a drill bit too small, you can always drill a bigger hole. Pick a drill bit too big and you'll have to find a bigger switch or another NES. At this point, go ahead and put everything back together except the top cover. Remember to test out the unit with a cartridge for a proper fit. Take and cut 3 small pieces of heat shrink tubing, large enough to fit over the stripped ends of the wire that will go on the switch. Slide the heat shrink over the wire before you solder the switch. Now it is time to solder our switch. The middle lead is the common lead. This is where our red wire, the wire that was soldered to the clipped lead, will be soldered to. Helping hands can help with this step as well. Be sure to give a healthy tug to ensure a good solder joint. After each lead is soldered, be sure to slide the heat shrink back over the lead of the switch and use the soldering iron to shrink the tubing down over the wire. The other 2 leads go on the other side of the switch. It doesn't matter which end. Go ahead and mount the switch through the hole of the top of the case. Reapply the top cover and put the screws back in. Now it's time to test our unit.